I describe them as it's like being in boot camp. Like you are in, it's like this intense 3 week experience where you go in and it's like being on Survivor and you just like go through all the motions and you like ride the high, ride the low, like you navigate every single storm or every incident that can happen.
Welcome to Survive the Shows.
Welcome everyone to this exciting interview segment here at Survive the Shows. I'm Desiree, and today we have the pleasure of sitting down with Rhonda Dent, star of the Element movie, His Taste of His Own Poison. Join us as we delve into Rhonda's insight into her character and the challenges of filming this movie. Thank you for being here with us, Rhonda.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure for me. So, talking about Taste of His Own Poison, what initially drew you to the character you play, and how did you prepare to bring her to life?
So I have started doing these lifetime thrillers in about 2020 as well. The first film I ended up doing was a role I received actually with my daughter, my real life daughter, who played kind of like my adopted daughter in the film. And it seems like every time I get cast in one of these roles, I end up playing a very strong, sort of like powerful mother that is always, kind of on the right side of, the line, trying to help her child or help what's best in like the scenario. And that's actually really what I love about this film too, is again, it's a mother faced with, deciding what is right and wrong when a child has done something like very bad, and where do you draw the line of like it's your child, you love your child no matter what, but also what they think maybe the child has done is like how should we handle it parentally, and all that kind of stuff. So that's, I think, what really drew me in on this particular character is that line you balance always as a parent of deciding when to have some level of like consequences and then also when to like parent with love.
Great.
Yeah.
And can you describe a scene or a moment on set that challenged you as an actress and how you overcame it in this movie, I mean?
In this movie, we had a few scenes. So we had one scene where we were actually in the police station, and it was kind of late in the day, and we'd been filming for a few days, and we all got like the giggles. And it was one of those things where you just couldn't stop laughing, but we had to really like rein it in and pull it together and make sure that this police scene was real. So that's one of those tough moments when you're like, you've been with your other like co-actors for a few days, and for whatever reason something seems hilarious, and then you can't stop laughing, and then you've got to like pull it together, and you've got to basically like be like, no, this is a serious moment. My child's getting interviewed at a police station. And I think that was actually one of the hardest moments because there was three of us and we were all laughing. And so we all just like had to like couldn't look at each other without like wanting to just bust out laughing for whatever reason. So that was actually one of the toughest. Another scene we had that was really tough is some of the stunt scenes. Because during the filming of this movie, I actually threw my back out. And so I was having like massive, severe like back pain. And then we had to do this full fight scene. And it was like a lot of like grappling, or like I was like getting hit with a bat. And I remember just being like, oh my God, like internally dying. But so that was really tough too. Just like I was trying to track down anything to sort of help make my back pain reduce. In the end, I iced it, and that actually brought down like the inflammation and helped it like calm down a little bit. But that was a whole other element to filming. Things you don't think about.
Yeah, exactly.
Like one actually on the note of that, one of the things like people probably don't ever think about is like this particular movie, we had to travel for it. So I had to go up to the Okanagan, which is like wine country in British Columbia, stayed at this gorgeous hotel. But one of the major things you don't realize sometimes when you travel is if you don't have your pillow that you're used to, like the way you're sleeping, it can crank your head like really weird. And so the hotel pillow was like too big. And so my head was like cranked weird, which then gave me like kind of weird neck issue, which then led into the back. And so that's what started the whole thing, was just like sleeping in a different bed that you're not used to and not having your regular sleeping regime. I later went home and brought back my own pillow. Yeah.
It's true.
Yeah.
And you said that in this role, you are a strong mother, like in the other one you played. But how does this role differ from others you've taken on in terms of emotional depth or complexity?
I think the major thing with this particular role is that in the other roles, like I've had a child go missing, or I've like inherited a child, or like it's been more about like that type of like loss or like worry. As we're in this case, where you're dealing with a child who you think may have killed someone, it's a completely different emotional journey where you're faced with like how do I deal with that? Like all of the consequences of that. You have to watch the movie to know what really happens, but just that again that sense of like from a parent's perspective, how am I going to handle this? And when at what point do I question my own child? At what point do I trust my child? Like all of these layers of like wanting to be again on the good side of the line and not really knowing whether your child is or isn't. I think that's really like that would be hard for any parent. I couldn't even imagine actually being faced to deal with that in real life, let
Yeah,
alone even when you're dealing with it like in a script, you still want to portray that all those layers that you have as a person when you love someone and knowing that they may have done something really wrong.
yeah,
So, yeah.
yeah, it's tough. And
Yeah. Hmm.
Taste of His Own Poison take us some intense themes. How did you navigate that emotional territories, both on and off camera?
Yeah, so this is interesting too. Like acting is this weird, crazy thing where it's like you go on this massive emotional ride like all day long, and then you like go home to a hotel room by yourself and have to like debrief. For me personally, like one of the things, like if I have a very emotional role, like I've always, whenever I've been acting and you're outside a lot, or you're like have a really long day, you're like covered in makeup, you've got people like around you from morning till night, they're touching you physically, they're in your face, touching your hair, like it can be like it's like a swarm of bees have been around you all day, and it's very overstimulating. I always, my number one is when I go home, I take off all the makeup and I like have a bubble bath. That is like my number one way to like wash off the day and just like cleanse it physically off my body, because it is it's just a lot. There's just like if anyone was in your space like all day long, it's like a bit overwhelming. And then from the emotional side of things, like depending on the day, like obviously sometimes laughter I use as like a technique to just like shake off the intensity of it. And in the world of TV movies, like the writing on this film was really good. I really enjoyed it. Um, but like there are some TV movies that the writing isn't as strong and you have to really like make something out of nothing. And so sometimes just finding the humor in those moments when you're trying so hard to be believable with dialogue that's really, really tough to, make sound really good. So laughter is a big one, but if not, like I've had other, like another film I did where I had a really emotional scene, and the mom was screaming and she was crying and she was in a forest, and it was just like just channeling all that energy. And for me it was like very therapeutic to just sort of like let this like animalistic like roar out. And I actually felt like better after, because I was kind of stressed out at the time, and I was like, oh, that was like a massive like emotional release, even though it was like in a role for a character. For me it was like this like way to just like unleash a little bit. So I think like the major things with like acting is like you have to always have this like strength and balance in knowing, if you are emotionally unstable on any level, to be able to take that time to sort of like, it's like opening a wound, but it's like at the end, you have to like make sure that wound gets some kind of covering or band-aid or like security on it, and like make sure it's taken care of at the end of the day. Uh, so you have to find techniques and tools. So every person's different. I mean, I think that's probably why so many actors end up using substances, but I'm like, I think like if you were a healthy actor and you can find other ways to sort of like calm your nervous system down after you've done this big dramatic scene, then you'll be so much better in the long run and you'll have better endurance long term too. And so for me, that was like water. I use water, whatever form of water, washing your face, washing your body, just like cleansing it off. And then like obviously doing a little bit of checking. I swim. That's another thing. So I'm like, whatever I can do to kind of like erase it almost, or like just clean it, like cleaning the chalkboard off, that kind
Yeah.
of thing. If that makes sense.
Yeah, makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah.
So, did working on element production shape your approach differently than projects with other actors or studios?
What was the first part of the question?
Working on an element lifetime production
Uh-huh.
shape your approach differently than
Mhm.
projects with other network or
Yes.
studios or
Yeah, the incredible, like I love making these movies. Like I really genuinely do. I love it. I love that these things run at like a high pace. So you get into work and you are on from morning until night. Like you film like 10 days in a row, 11 days in a row, sometimes up to 15 days in a row, or like with weekend breaks or whatever. And the most I think I shot in one day was like 16 scenes, which is like an astronomical amount to film in one day. And like monologues and like dialogue and like boom, boom, boom. Like you change your clothes sometimes like 8 times a day because you're in like the scenes are laid out in different orders. So you're in one costume, out of one costume, like your head is spinning the amount of times you've changed your clothes sometimes. Um, so I think like the major thing about them, I describe them as it's like being in boot camp. Like you are in, it's like this intense 3 week experience where you go in and it's like being on Survivor and you just like go through all the motions and you like ride the high, ride the low, like you navigate every single storm or every incident that can happen. But I feel like it's prepped me on a level for any other role because when you're in it, like you're so thick in the mud that like your everything is so fresh. You're so wired to be able to respond quickly and to be able to emotionally react and be able to perform like at a high pace level, to be able to like learn dialogue quickly and then like and be believable. Like I feel like it's the greatest training anyone could ever really have in the world of acting because it just makes you're all in. You don't have a minute to not be present in that experience. So I personally love it. I really do. Genuinely love it. I think it's fun. I guess because it's my personality. Like I like that kind of thing. Like I like to be like, if I'm gonna be there, I'm like, I'm doing it. I'm all in. For other people, if they like to work at a slower pace, they would be very stressed out because it's very high pace. It's very intense, but in a good way. Like I feel like if you've got a good team around you and you've got, all the right elements, it can be super fun. So yeah, I think they're fun.
so is it true? The question is the challenge is survive the shows.
Yeah, like it's no joke. Like you really are like in it. Like I said, like this particular film, we were shooting in Kelowna and I had back pain and I was literally in like pain like I'd never felt. Like the whole back had seized up. And I like a couple of days later, finally I'd gotten some like Robaxacet or something to like release the muscle and I iced it and I'd gotten it under control. And a couple of people didn't even know like that the level of pain I was in. I was like, oh my God, like I was dying. And I was like, I must have a really good poker face because nobody could tell like the amount of like actual intense pain I was in. Um, so yeah, it is literally surviving the show. And in your head, you're like, okay, I know you got a couple weeks, it's like short-term pain, long-term gain. But they are intense. And like Vancouver used to just be like, it still is like we still film a lot of TV movies, but there was a point we were filming like 100 of these a year. Like we were pumping them out. And it's kind of like whittled down a little bit now. But they still do them. And they're still like, I know there's a massive fan base for them and I know people love them and pretty entertaining. I love watching them myself to see all my friends in different shows and what parts they've done. And they're like they're pretty cool. I mean, they're interesting, you know. They're kind of like I guess like a different version of a soap opera, but they're like a condensed soap opera and like but not quite soap opera, you know, like in like a 1 or 2 hour experience. Yeah, they're kind of
Yeah.
neat that way. What got you interested in them?
I like the thrillers with the female driven stories where the
Uh-huh.
female are a protagonist, and I
Oh,
like the all the layered that we can see on this
yeah,
movie, and
yeah.
sometimes there are real life stories too, so it's
Hmm.
more meaningful,
That's true.
right?
Yeah. Yeah, I did a real life one for the Victoria Gotti story. So it was the daughter of like the Gotti mob mafia. I played her mom in the film. That was one of the first Lifetime movies I did. That was one of the real Lifetime stories. And that role actually like changed my life. It was one that like I feel like I was just dying to be super creative and like make something. And because it was based on truth, um, for me, it was like such an enjoyable experience to sort of like bring this woman's story to life. Like I just thought it was really cool. That's the good thing with like Lifetime movies is they allow a lot of emotional expansion to happen for you as an actor. It's
Yeah,
really cool that way. Yeah, it really can test you in a lot of ways, which is neat. Yeah.
and I think about the real life stories that even if an entertained way, that's allowed people, the
Mhm.
viewers,
Mhm.
uh, and in a large scale, they can know, understand what happens in real life, and you can be aware of some,
Yeah, that's true.
yeah,
Yeah, and they always have no shortage of stories.
yeah, exactly.
For sure. Yeah. That's interesting. Yeah.
Great. So,
Yeah.
change the subject a little bit. Okay.
Yeah.
Please walk us through a day in the life during filming. How does
Yeah.
it do you transition in and out of character?
Mhm. Okay, so we actually made a little TikTok while we were filming this movie of the day in the life of a Lifetime movie. And it's full on. You wake up, you probably like sometimes you're picked up at like 5:40 in the morning, like 5:40 a.m., maybe 6 a.m. You drive over to the circus, what they call it, like the set with all the trucks. You go usually like you can get something to eat. You might change part of the wardrobe depending how complicated it is when they do your hair and makeup. And then otherwise you're into hair and makeup. That usually takes about an hour and a half to do both. Then you're back into your room, you're getting organized. Then you have to get like, usually like depending what time of year you're filming, like if you're filming in the winter in Canada, it's usually cold. So you have a lot of layers on. And then eventually you got to figure out where you're going to put your microphone on because you got to like layer that into all your clothes, but know that you're changing your clothes maybe up to 8 times that day. So you need it like, I usually wear it like around the waist. So then it's like kind of in there. And then if you're doing a quick swap, you don't have to undo everything. But that also can make you really hot because it's kind of like around your waist. Then basically you would go up to the set. Eventually, they would take you to the actual location. You would do like a blocking, which is like walking through the scene and like figuring out physically where you're going to be within the scene. And then once they've seen the blocking, then they decide where all the lights are going to go. And so they set all of that up. Then you go back to like a holding area. And then you would wait there with your other actors. They would do any final touches on you with hair and makeup. Then you go back to the set when they're ready. And then you would actually do one rehearsal for camera to make sure they have all the marks, make sure everything of that is good, any final tweaks, and then they'll go to camera. And then we'll shoot the scene. Depending on how complex the scene is, you might only get a few takes on it. Like usually they'll do a wide shot first, and then they'll go into close-up coverage. And then you do that like on repeat. So depending how many scenes you're doing, like you would do that up to 8, maybe 10 times a day. Unless you're dealing with the fight scenes. Those always take a lot more time. Whenever there's like a stunt scene, they block out more time because physically it takes more time to work out the blocking. And then also make sure the camera's in the right place, make sure the actors know what they're doing. Like in this film, we had to do our own stunts. So we basically were like fighting each other and we had to learn all the movements to like learn how to make it believable. And again, I was dealing with back pain, so I only could do so much. So I was like, kind of like, okay, we got to amend this a little bit. But that takes a bit of time just to practice, make sure it's viable. And then, yeah, you run like you do 12-hour days. So basically you run from like, but the actors are brought in, they do more than 12 hours because you're brought in an hour and a half earlier than everyone else for hair and makeup. So
Oh,
your 12 hours then becomes like 14 hours because you're getting picked up and driven there too. So it becomes 14 to 15-hour day, depending on your wrap out. So it's
yeah,
long. And then
yeah.
you get maybe like an hour break for lunch, which then you might travel back to your trailer just to like debrief for a minute or like run any dialogue you haven't maybe mastered or, that kind of thing. Um, but yeah, you're on. Like if you're in every scene, you just go. And then sometimes they'll have like a secondary set for you where they'll like drive you over to that set to change your clothes. And then you literally change clothes and you're back in and you're like, okay, what scene are we on now? And then you just like keep going. So it's like a very fast paced moving machine.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's
And
cool.
some in depth, in your experience, some scene is condensed in one day, all of in that day, or you can do that in more days and one scene stunt of a day.
It really depends on multiple factors. Like,
Oh,
usually they'll shoot it in one day, but often it depends on the location and how long they have the location. So like they'll try and shoot out, like say if they've rented a space to be like the police station, then you'll do all your police station stuff within
okay.
that couple days kind of thing that they have it. Then they'll like wrap out that location and then you move to wherever else. So like in this case, like we shot in a house overlooking kind of like the lake in Kelowna. And so we shot as much as we needed in the house. Then we moved to like the police station stuff. And then we moved to I think we had a couple other locations. I'm trying to think now. Yeah, we kind of you move around a little bit, depending on, but they try and bulk them together just to make it most
Yeah,
sense because then you can accomplish the most in one day, the least amount of moving around. So
yeah,
yeah. But
great.
that means that you're not necessarily shooting in order. So sometimes you can
Yeah,
shoot the ending of the movie before you've even shot the rest of the movie. That is really hard, actually, sometimes when you have to shoot the ending first, because it's often your first day of filming and everyone's still getting to know each other. And so it can be like a little rocky because you're just sort of like figuring out your footing a little bit. And then if it's like the whole ending of the movie, you're like doing it backwards. But that's not always the case. That just happens sometimes. So, yeah.
great. And
Yeah.
during these long days, what's your ritual for memorizing lines or getting into
Mm,
character, especially
yeah.
when filming tight turnarounds, like we said,
Yeah.
13, 15 in a day?
So what I normally do, I have like a whole system. I like go through my whole entire script. I will break it down scene by scene. Then I go through like each scene and I'll count up how many lines I have in that scene. If I have less than 10 or 11 lines, I consider that small. If I have anything over 11, I consider that a big scene. So anything that has like, and then when I get like, you get these like breakdowns of like what days you're filming what scenes. So I'll focus on day one and be like, okay, we're doing, scene 12, 13, 14, 15, or whatever. And then I'll write down beside them like a number saying like, okay, scene 12 has like 22 lines. So then I know, oh, I need to spend some time making sure I really know what I'm saying in that scene. As there maybe scenes 12, 13, and 14, there's no lines because it's just an action scene. So
Oh,
like I will break down every single day knowing roughly how much dialogue I have per day because then it mentally prepares me. And even if it's like if it's 10 lines or less, because I do this so often, like I feel like I can learn that pretty quickly unless it's like really chunky or really like medical or really like scientific dialogue that takes a lot of practice. But otherwise, if it's just like, dialogue that is conversing between you and your child or you and your husband, or a police officer, that's fairly easy to learn. But that's how I typically do it is I'll go through the whole entire script. I'll break down every single scene. I'll count up the actual number of lines I have. And then I make notes so that I know that like these are like say there's like five, there's always like four or five maybe scenes that have like a lot of dialogue, like 22 lines. And then that I know that I got to spend at least, half an hour extra to really make sure I'm comfortable with that dialogue. Sometimes too, the other tricky thing they do sometimes is there'll be two scenes that are separated, but sometimes they'll blend the scene together, which because of the location, they'll be like, okay, well, we're just going to combine these two scenes. So then you got to be pretty quick to know that, like, okay, I may have not prepared to run it as one consecutive scene, but now we are. So then you got to like be fast on your feet to like learn the dialogue to get
Yeah.
all the way through. Because sometimes they spring that on you and you just got to be prepared. So that's why it's always good to have an idea of what you're prepping. But as long as I think your first 2 days, like off by heart, no problem. And then you're into the swing of memorizing, then you can kind of look at each day like the night before and like really like prep yourself for the day after. But yeah, it's a lot.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
And talking about these, the lines and the scene to film, how do you balance intuition versus technical preparation when approaching to a new scene or to
Hmm.
the lines?
Great question. I live through like an organic, sort of intuitive kind of like reaction to things. That's definitely how I choose to perform. I don't like anything like overly like rehearsed or polished. I feel like I get too much in my head that way. So I'm very much of like reacting to the actor, like the other, like the performer you're working with, and finding that real authentic experience and or like reaction to the scene. And if for some reason you're not getting what you need, I feel like that's usually when you have to either involve the director or talk to the other actor and see if you can try it a different way to maybe get it to where you want it to be. But yeah, it's definitely like I personally like I it's interesting. Like when I got into this position where I was like the one that's on set every day, all day, and seeing other actors come in and seeing how their process works, I found it fascinating to see who likes to have it really rehearsed and likes to really memorize. I put my cup down now, I do this, like very scheduled in the way their performance is, because my brain's never worked that way. Like I've always been very like kind of fluid and like sort of organic in that process of like letting it evolve. And yes, you have to memorize certain things strictly for continuity. There's no denying that. But I've never been so stuck that I have to put my cup down now, like my brain just doesn't work that way. So for me personally, that's how I do it is I like let it kind of, it's almost like music. I like let the music kind of flow and I let it play out and see what happens.
That's
But yeah,
interesting.
knowing, yeah, like once you've done it, you've understood your music, you got to recreate your music. So you kind of like, there might be a few differences, but you still like the music is there to be played kind of thing. So yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
And change of subject again, talking about your career in general.
Yeah.
Looking back to your career, which role do you feel was the biggest turning point in your career
Hmm.
and why for you?
Yeah, that actually goes back to the Lifetime movie, the
Yeah,
Victoria Gotti story. That movie for me was a turning point because up to that point, like I had done mostly supporting roles in like, various Hallmark movies or like not even Lifetime movies actually. I'd only done really like supporting in Hallmark and then TV stuff. And then when I got that role playing Victoria Gotti's mother, that was like this rich like just emotionally like fulfilling role. And
yeah,
I was at a point in my career where I was kind of like, I knew I was capable of more. I knew I could do better work, basically, is really what it boils down to. And that gave me an opportunity because we had to do an accent. We had to do multiple different time periods. I had to do like in the film, like her son dies. And so she has this whole grief element that comes to her. So for me, it was just this like delicious kind of role where I got to like look different like ways. I got to feel all these different emotions. And it was the first time like I was like number 3 on the call sheet. So it's like not number 1, but you're like up in the top 3. So that was like important. I hadn't really been that high yet. So and that kind of like launched me into then like getting on to be like a number 1, which for me was like the stepping stone. So it was definitely a turning point, and also like embracing the idea of playing like a mother, which I hadn't done yet really. Like I had, but like more supporting kind of side character. So like
Yeah,
really embracing the concept of like being in this role that allows like this journey to happen on a story.
that's amazing.
Yeah, thanks.
And something to know you better,
Yeah.
outside of acting, what
Yeah.
passion or hobbies ground you and help recharge your creativity?
Well, this year has been a creative year of all creative years. So I am by trade, I'm also a photographer. I have had a camera in my hand since I was like a child. So I have been shooting photography for like since I was like 15 or 14 or something. So that's who I am, as a woman with a camera in her hands. I also this year am getting trained to learn how to direct. So I've actually gone to film school this year and I'm learning. So I eventually will be able to direct these films or a film of my own, which we've done a couple in the course. And then now, so right now we're learning all of the editing, everything to do with filmmaking, which is just like blown my mind at the possibilities that can come forward after this. So that's another huge thing that's happening. And then like my daughter, her and I have written a children's book this year. So that is
Oh,
something we are currently working on. It's kind of well, it's related to like children's mental health. So it's a cute little story about a little girl who like has too many thoughts that get stuck in her head and
yeah.
she can't fall asleep. So we're working on that, which is nearing the ending. And then her and I wrote a short film together that we're also going to be producing in August about a little girl that doesn't talk. So
Oh,
we are both going to act in that together. Actually, that's our next project we're doing. So we're filming that like in mid-August this year. And yeah, like after I've also applied for some other programs to learn more about directing. But really like it's just opened my mind up to the possibilities now because now I've been trained with like writing, producing, and directing along with acting. And I just feel like I just want to embrace it all. I like love it. It's like something I've always loved. I grew up in a very like movie loving family. Like my mom was obsessed with films, my brother was obsessed with films. Like we watched movies nonstop as kids. So like that joy that it brought us as like children, I want to make a few films that kind of bring that joy back to people, like you know that comedic element, that like heartfelt kind of like storytelling, um where you're kind of rooting for the underdog. That kind of film is really what I want to produce and make. So that's sort of where I see things leading towards in the future, is making something like that.
great.
Yeah, yeah.
So you a little bit anticipate my last question. What upcoming roles or collaboration are you most excited about other than this movie, Lifetime movie, and why?
Yeah. What collaboration am I most excited about? Is that what you said?
What roles or collaboration? Your
Oh,
upcoming
yeah.
projects?
I think like the stuff working with my daughter has been
Yeah.
amazing. My little human is a very creative little being. And I just think it's just like opened my mind again, like seeing this little person come through the acting realm from like she's had like she did her first movie at 3 years old. She's basically had a camera in her face since like the second she was born. So just helping expand that and see what she enjoys and loves of it, that's really fun. Like I feel like her and I have had this amazing creativity that we've been able to bounce back different ideas and different things together. So I've loved that. I've also loved working with some of the people I've met in this film program I'm doing, because again, it's like creative minds that are all wanting to produce and create really cool things, experimenting with like different techniques or tools that you don't have the time to do maybe on a TV film. TV movie set or whatever. So like being able to explore it more in the short film realm, that's
Yeah.
really amazing. Um, yeah, like everything creative. I don't know. I just live for the arts. I love it. I just think it's fun. Yeah. But yeah, like just being, I think just like being collaborative in general and like finding really solid people that you work really well with together is critical. That's what I'm learning too, is like finding those people that you gel really well with, that you enjoy the process of creation with. Because what I'm learning is like a movie set entails so many people, and every single person is like a variable. And
Yes.
so, like, at any point, something can go wrong because there's so many people involved. So, when you're putting like people that you really enjoy being around or working with there, they usually bring on good people, which then creates like this blooming effect of like an amazing project. If you bring in people, a couple bad attitudes, it can kind of like,
Yeah.
and it fizzle down and create a lot of stress. So it's really learning how to manage all of that I'm learning through this process in that world of creation. It's a lot.
That's great. So this is it.
Okay,
Make,
thank you. That's very cool.
make sure all of you to quote Taste of His Own Poison the next Friday night on
Yeah.
Element.
Yay. I hope you
Yay.
enjoyed it. Have
Yeah,
fun.
have fun. And thank
Okay.
you, Rhonda, to join us today.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. Have a
For me
great day.
too.
Okay.
And thank
Take
you
care.
for watching.
Bye. Enjoy the movie.
Bye.
Thanks. See you on the next one.